Well, good evening, good morning, and good whatever time of day it is, wherever you're listening to this podcast. Welcome to the Tattoo Teacher Podcast. Tonight, this morning, I'm speaking with Paul Matthews. Now, Paul is an educational consultant. He's an EdTech CEO, a history teacher, an entrepreneur, and recently a TEDx speaker. So, Paul, welcome to the Tattoo Teacher Podcast.
I got to tell you, Phil, it's good to be here, and congratulations. I can't believe the best name in podcasting was still available after all this time. So well done on grabbing that one.
Yeah, look, it certainly was a challenge coming up with one that's authentic to me, but two that brings in the educational bit, hence teacher. But trying to find an educational name, like there was just every one of them was taken. And I figure, you know what? It's about being authentic. So I'm tattooed. I'm a teacher. Let's do it.
Rock and roll. Well, I'm ready to go. Although I haven't shown them too publicly, we are on LinkedIn often is where we're communicating, and I feel like the bar is pretty high for professionalism. But man, I got more than a few tattoos myself, so we can connect at least on that level.
Absolutely, and I'm sure one or two more. So
yeah.
Mate, but you're doing all these things. So you're a history teacher. Then you've moved into the EdTech space.
Yep.
Into consultancy. You've been asked to speak at a TEDx. What's your why?
That's a really good question. And I think once I explain it, you'll see a pretty clear through line. My big vision in life really is to help see students, teachers and school communities thrive. And that was really what I was working at when I was teaching history at an independent school down here in Hobart. It's what I do in my consulting, and it's why we build our software. So although it might look like quite a varied range of things that I'm doing, there is one really clear through line. I just want to see students, teachers and school communities thrive. And between you and I, Phil, it's actually been interesting attacking that from various angles and getting to work in, say, the professional development and advisory consulting space here, providing a technology solution there, doing some speaking over here. I've had an absolute blast, and the varied roles has actually stretched me in a bunch of ways, which I'm sure we'll get into, but that's my underlying passion. I love education, I love people, and I want to see school communities thrive.
Mate, that's so refreshing to hear. It's especially in this day and age where education is sometimes just a punching bag, and people are just down on us teachers, even though I would dare say we have probably one of the most important jobs in society at the moment, and that's
exactly.
educating our young people.
You take away teachers and you don't have much left, because of course every other profession that there is resting on a foundation of good education. So I think, look, bemoan and bewail your teachers at your own risk, because in reality, if they decide to shut up shop and head home, you're actually in a good deal of trouble.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I dare say all these people, if we had a conversation with them and said, oh, so when back in school, did you have a favourite teacher? I reckon every one of them would say, yeah, they had someone who spoke into their lives, who made them feel good, who supported them in a time of need. You know, they might not remember the maths, science or English. They'd remember design and technology, of course, but they'll remember how they felt in that classroom. And already from this, you know, we're 3 minutes in, and already I can see that passion is just coming through the screen. So it's fantastic to see and to hear.
And I think, I will just say this. It's that passion, I think, which is often missing, Phil, in the EdTech space, isn't it? Because what you do is you have a lot of developers, a lot of sort of venture capitalists or tech guys, and they're trying to weasel their way into the classroom. And I think actually, as I've dealt with schools and learning communities over the last 6 months with my teacher aid, one of the things that has been most surprising to me is when people are amazed that you know what a learning intention is, or a success criteria, or that you know what a rubric is, because they're so used to blokes who are trying to muscle their way in from a tech background into education. It really does bake people's noodle when there's an educator in the mix. So in that way, I think I would encourage any teacher if you've got an idea, if you want to make something happen, teachers are often far more willing and open when they're dealing with teachers than when they're dealing with people from other fields. This is what I've found. Not to say everyone in other fields are snake oil salesmen and they'll muck you around. All I'm saying is there's a natural affinity teachers have for teachers. So if you're a teacher and you're thinking, oh man, like I couldn't bring anything to this space, actually, as we spoke about, your passion for education, your desire to see students thrive, that's the sort of thing that's actually going to naturally resonate with teachers, and teachers can actually sniff that out a mile off. So look, if you're a teacher, you're going to have an in with a lot of teachers, that's for sure.
Oh, absolutely. And I'm seeing that more and more in some of the conversations that I'm having, much like yourself. You're a teacher first and foremost, but you've seen a need and you've seen an opportunity and you've taken the risk, and it's hard work, and I'm sure there's been some very low days where you're just going, what am I doing? But you can come to it with going, I know what teachers need. I know the daily struggles that they have. So I'm crafting something that's actually going to help them.
Yeah, and that makes things a lot easier, because I remember when I was starting my teacher aid, I did some work with a marketing firm. We've got some really good marketing people now, but the first couple of people we worked with, they said, oh, I'd like you to fill out this 35-page PDF and we're going to get a market profile. You know, we're going to get our ideal customer profile. And I took a look at it and I thought, the ideal customer is me. Like, I'm the person, I'm making this for me, and I'm making this for the people in my staff room, and I'm making this for all the people who are struggling to just keep their head above water as they're trying to do their marking and assessments and do their duties and meetings and all these sorts of things. So, yeah, I mean, I guess it's just one of those truisms. So, like, if you trust that you will use the product that you're creating, and you know there's a lot of people out there like you, well, you're going to have a far easier time of it, rather than trying to sit back and sort of understand the ideal customer profile of some people group or demographic that you don't really know from a bar of soap.
Yeah, exactly. Your target audience is teachers, is schools, is people, is yourself, like you said. So yeah, that's awesome. And that's what teachers need. We need people, we need stuff that's going to help us, because you know the struggles that we go through. So that's fantastic. Now, I'm sure you've had, over the years, as we all have, a few ups and downs, a few failures or even apparent failures, but they generally set you up for success. So do you have a failure? And I see it, and I teach my kids that failure isn't the end point. Failure is just it's the position before you succeed. So do you have a favorite failure that has set you up for success?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I can think of it right now. Is in my first year of teaching, I was in the classroom, I was really fresh, I had a big head full of ideas, but I was what we teachers would call pretty green. Like, I just hadn't actually been in that many classrooms. And I had one student who I just couldn't reach. And I found out later what I perceived to be an attitude problem, a real moral failing on their behalf. You know, they're not a good kid, they're not doing the right thing. There were some really simple sort of mechanical reasons for that. They couldn't hear properly and they were sat in the back corner of the room. And there were some simple intellectual reasons for that. I was actually probably pitching things a little too high for this student. What did that give me? It gave me a really clear understanding that I might be able to sort of perceive the difficulties I'm having in a situation, but I actually can't read people's minds. So having a good, honest conversation, bit of a heart-to-heart, away from the crowd, away from the rest of the class, it's going to give me a lot of information, and it's going to allow me to connect with people more. And it's that individual connection, dealing with people, that teachers are so good at. We do it every single day. In fact, we're managing often between 20 and 30 relationships at any one time in the classroom. And if you zoom out, that's what family is. That's what business is. That's what everything is. If you can manage people, if you can connect well with people, then there's actually not much that you can't do. And I've certainly then found that as I'm engaging with different stakeholders with business, or as I'm engaging with principals and school leaders with my consulting, even when I still spend the odd day in the classroom right now, actually being able to connect with people is crucial. And I don't think I would have had to spend so much time and effort working on how I connect with people. If I hadn't had that one student in my first year out that I just couldn't break through to for a really long time.
Yeah. Oh, that's we've all had those students, and I think even now, like I'm a 20 year plus teacher, and kids are kids, and you still have that. How do I get through to this kid? Just it was probably last year, maybe the year before. I just started at a new school up here on the Gold Coast, and again, this kid looked like he was just had the bad attitude, blah blah blah. Typical everyone. And so I asked a couple of other teachers, "Oh, what do you think of this kid?" And they're like, "Oh, he's trouble. He's a rat bag. But I mean, I've got a soft spot for the for those kids anyway. So, um, but I just had a conversation with him, and all of a sudden he just started opening up. And it wasn't that he didn't like anyone. He didn't like school. His passion. He was 16, already had two businesses, worked on the side with his dad as a boilermaker on mining equipment. So this kid was set up. He knew where he was going, but school was just this. Oh God, I've got to do it because you can't leave school at 15 anymore. So, but once we started having these conversations, and I found that connection point, it was golden. It was golden. So,
and just a question on that, Phil. Were you able to actually have that connection away from the class? Because I found one of the mistakes I made as an early career teacher is someone's giving you grief in the class and you're trying to get through to them in the class. And what they're doing is they're not engaging with you. They're performing in front of the rest of the class and you're just not making headway ever. So you could have 10 hours of conversation in front of the rest of the class. And actually, if you manage to scruff the bloke while you're out on duty and have a bit of a chat that way, you make a lot more headway. So when you were actually able to make progress with this student, this young man, were you able to speak with him away from the sort of the lights and the audience that we're often finding kids have in class?
Yeah, I spoke with him in the classroom, but his mates weren't there that day. He was on his own. He was just, so all the other kids were working over there, and he was just sitting there, just looking for 4-wheel drive parts. So, and it was just that opportune moment to make that human connection, and which helped him get through the rest of the schooling, but also helped me get through, enjoy the class even more. So it's it's always a challenge, and to share that's fantastic. And as a first year teacher, I think we've all had that definitely as well, and many more.
Yeah.
Now, look, I did a little bit of research. I like to sort of find out about my guests a little bit where I can. Now, you come from a family of educators.
Yep.
You went to the school that you are working at is the school that you attended. And
Correct.
These are faith-based. So, do you think that family heritage and your faith has impacts the way you work and the way you approach life?
Absolutely. I think part of what shapes our action is thinking about the kind of story that we're in. And we're all in sort of stories at various levels. There's a story of like, who am I? What am I about? Where am I heading? And it took me a little while to sort that story out myself. But there's a story of sort of who are we? Who is my family? What is my heritage? And my heritage is that my family came over from Holland about 2 generations ago. They landed in Kingston, Tasmania. They started a church, they started a school, and they stayed put. And they had lots of babies. So I have lots of cousins. And we have a really rich community of faith down here in Kingston, Tasmania. And that's been not just a faith that has sat on the couch and eaten potato chips, but a faith that's had legs and biceps and that's got stuff done. Like I said, built churches, built schools, started aged care facilities, started hospitals, these sorts of things. So that's really part of my story. I think about it like this, Phil, and this is a metaphor that I often use with my students. And when my sons are old enough, I've got 3 sons. I've got Moses, Solomon, and Phineas, and they're 3, 2, and 8 months old. So they're pretty young. But when they're old enough to understand what a toboggan is, I'll give them my toboggan metaphor. I picture it like this. there's a big hill covered in snow. One generation goes down in the toboggan and they smooth the path and they go a certain distance. The next generation, well, because the path was smooth, they can go even further. And the next generation, further still. And I see myself, like by God's grace, as being the fourth or fifth, sixth generation who's had a really good run at things in my family. And what does that mean? It means I don't want to sit on my hands. I want to carry it further. And for me, that's all about education. My brothers are educators. My dad is an educator. His dad is an educator. So I want to continue on that family story, that family narrative of working hard to see students, teachers, and school communities really thrive. And that's been in a faith-based context for my life. I taught at a Christian school and went to a Christian school. And my dad and his dad were principals of Christian schools. And now I'm working with Christian schools with my consulting. Just between you and I've just sent the manuscript for a book off to Christian Schools International to be published. So continuing on that ministry there, and also working with all kinds of different schools when it comes to consulting and tech solutions as well.
Yeah, because I mean, I've got my own personal Christian faith as well, and I know that shapes the way I approach things and view things. That's my perspective. Is it right? Well, I believe so, but I'm not going to judge anyone for saying no. That's the wrong way to look at stuff, because we live in such a melting pot of opinion and background and influence that it's so important that we value each other. And by the sounds of it, the way you approach your business and obviously and the students is by going, you know what, I'm looking at what is around it because everyone has value. So let's see what we can all bring to this table.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've had some really rich conversations about values and about identity and about what it means to be humans with teachers recently as we think about artificial intelligence. I mean, I guess for a long time, we didn't necessarily have to think too hard about those things because there wasn't a technology out there that was sort of masquerading as a human and doing a lot of very human things quite well. And so now it's actually got a lot of people asking some pretty pressing questions. What value am I bringing to the table as a human educator? Can I easily be replaced? I don't think I can, but why don't I think I can? So not only are we dealing with our beliefs, but we're dealing with the feelings that undergird our beliefs. And there's often not necessarily a clearly delineated difference between those two. It's a big mix of feelings and ideas and assumptions about the world, and not argued for, but argued from premises that we think about often. So look, I think this is a time where people are having to bring their, what we might call their worldview, up into the light and actually look at it, because there are some big existential questions going on in the world of AI, aren't there? Questions about what it means to be human, about what we're bringing to the table as educators, so forth. So I think it's actually a great time to be having these conversations.
Yeah, most definitely. It's one of those things where that your worldview shapes so much of your opinion, of how you actually approach people, things, whatever it might be. And I guess coming at from a history perspective, like teaching history, you teach about various worldviews and the positives and negatives that have come about from what someone thinks.
Exactly. And history is a great teacher. History is a fantastic teacher, because one of the most common religions of the day, Phil, and people might not necessarily think about it like this, I think there in some ways is a worship of technology. Now, what do I mean by that? I don't mean that there's a mosque or a church or a synagogue somewhere where people are bowing down to a plasma screen TV or something like that. What I mean is we've all got a worldview, all right? And one of the ways you can get in and see what is it I actually believe about the world, if you ask yourself, well, what's gone wrong and how do we fix it? That will often be like a shovel that allows you to dig up your fundamental assumptions about the world. And if you ask a lot of people, they go, what's gone wrong? So we simply don't have the right technology. We're not advanced enough. We haven't progressed far enough. Well, how do we fix that? Well, we actually fix that by progressing, by advancing, by getting more, better tech. That will put all the frustrations and pain points of our world out of commission. And being a history teacher, I can tell you, if the 20th century taught us anything, Phil, is that technology makes fantastic tools, but terrible saviors. When we think that technology is going to solve our problems, we actually end up in twice the mess that we were in the first place.
Yeah, and I mean, I think we're seeing that now. I mean, we're looking at just talking about tech, especially, and some of the damage that it has done or is doing. We look at social media and we see that day to day the impact on our young people. What was started out as a human connection, it was. I mean, I generally look in a very optimistic viewpoint that that people are overtly good. There are some bad players and there's some very horrible people out in the world. Don't get me wrong, but people who develop certain things for human connection and things like that, they're doing it out of the goodness of let this will be great. But then things happen, and we're seeing the negative impact of something that these young people, they place their value in it and they place their worth in it, and their comparison. Oh, mate, as soon as you and I, we look at, we can look out and compare ourselves to some other people in our professional space and go, oh, I'll never make that. Yet where we have the maturity and the wisdom, I would say, to go, no, actually, hold on, no, let's take a step back and let's reevaluate. Whereas these young people, they just can't do it. So, I mean, in your travels, have you seen that?
Absolutely. I saw it all the time. And my basic MO, Phil, the way I'm thinking about this often is, if I struggle with it, my students are struggling 10 times more. First of all, I'm in my 30s. I've had 3 decades of opportunities and, more than a full decade with a pretty well-developed brain to think about things like, wisdom and virtue and moderation and modesty and all these sorts of things. So if I, with that brain, am having a hard time with something on my phone, someone with less experience and a less fully formed brain, I've got to think they're having probably 10 times the struggle that I'm having. And that's really illustrative for me. I mean, I think I'm a pretty self-controlled guy, but I still find myself scrolling a bit. So it's actually no wonder that when I open up the phone of some of my students, I'm seeing 8 hours of screen time a day. If I'm struggling with it, you better believe they're struggling with it too. So I think it's one of those things that we have to be very, very careful of. And, I do a lot of thinking about AI. One of the big failings as schools in the space of social media was going, there's this thing happening out there. Should we do anything about it? Probably not our problem. We'll just stay in our lane, right? But actually, that often happens when we're talking about AI, doesn't it? Oh, yeah, there's this stuff happening out there. There's chatbots, there's this, there's that. Snapchat's got a new AI built into it. There's all these chatbots that are formed after celebrities that students will engage with for hours. Will we do much about it? Nah, probably not. Still developing. We'll just take it easy for now. Let's not make the same mistake we made with social media. Schools actually need to be pretty proactive with this stuff, because we saw that social media took an apple core to the confidence and well-being of a whole generation of students. If we're not smart about it, AI could actually only speed up at the same issue. That's why I'd say, actually, as schools, we need to learn the lessons. We talk about history. We need to look back, even if it's only over the last 10 years, and say, hey, we were probably asleep at the switch for that last one. Let's not make the same mistake again. You know what I mean?
Absolutely, yeah. Because I've seen most recently in the media, there's been a couple of key key stories. The first one was, which I guess brought it to the surface for society, was when there was the deep fakes and the illicit material that was made of Taylor Swift. That. Oh, yeah, and she's on a world stage. She is world, and so she came out and said, "This is happening." And then most recently, I saw down in Victoria, I think it was, a school down there, where thankfully the school and the police acted quickly, but using these tools which were developed for good, some students were using them and have done tremendous damage to a number of students there. So I think it's absolutely inherent that schools take AI seriously.
Well, it is, Phil. It is. And the sad thing about it is, if a student isn't aware that what they're doing is a crime, it's illegal. So you're actually making sexually exploitative material of someone in real life. That's abuse. All right. that has to be referred to the Australian E-Safety Commissioner when a school finds out about that. Now you can see how if you're a young bloke and you're a potato head, because most young blokes are just potato heads. I was when I was a young bloke. You probably were too. It's just how you are. You're not thinking straight. You don't know what consequences are. And you've got this technology on your phone. You think, oh, wouldn't this be funny? If no one's told you how serious that is, how much hot water you can get into with that sort of activity, and how much hot water you can get into really, really quickly. You know, you do something dumb, you send it to your mates. Hey, check this out. Isn't this funny? You're in a lot of trouble. You are in a lot of trouble right then. We need to actually be on the forefront telling this to our students. We need to forecast the fact that there are things in your possession. There are tools that you might even have on your phone right now that, boy, oh boy, they could change your life for the worse, and it could all happen in the blink of an eye. We actually need to get out in front of this and tell that to our students because, I mean, look, what was I in school? Maybe 15 years ago. I'm 33 now. I would have graduated out about 15 years ago. And I was doing dumb stuff. I'm often very, very thankful that I didn't have the capacity to make a meal of my life like some of these students do, because I would have done it 5 times in a row. I definitely wouldn't have trusted myself with some of these tools. So I think it's just a call, as we said, it's a call for education, it's a call for diligence for schools, and for making sure that our young people know the gravity of the situation they're in.
Yeah, definitely. It's all about education. It's about making them aware of repercussion of the how good the tool can be and how it can benefit their life, their education. It can help leverage certain parts. It's not the be all and end all, but it can certainly help. But make sure that you use it properly and not for these things because they're not funny.
Mm,
They're just not funny.
yeah.
I'm so glad there was no mobile phone technology, no cameras or anything like that. Especially when I was a young lad, because one, I wouldn't have trusted myself, and two, definitely wouldn't have trusted my mates because yeah, we just did dumb stuff because we thought it was funny.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, you only would have ratcheted up the dumbness and the frequency if you could show your mates not just there, but all around Australia and broadcast that and try and make a name for yourself. You're right. Look, it's a tough time to be a kid. It's a tough time to be a kid. And I often say, and I'm going to use religious language here. Some people kick at the word sin. They don't like the word sin. I can say wrongdoing or just doing the wrong thing, but whatever label you give it, there's something in us that we all kind of fundamentally feel is wrong. Again, if you're making a deep fake nude image of your teacher or of a girl in your class or of a bloke in your class. So call it what you want. It's missing the mark. It's doing the wrong thing. And I'd put it to you, Phil, it's never been easier to do the wrong thing. It just has never been easier. To use a specific example about pornography, and there are a million examples I could use, but just to choose pornography. My grandfather went through his school life not seeing any pornography, and it took zero willpower. Zero. You know, he just never came across his desk. He was just never there. If a young person today can go through life, go through their schooling years without seeing any pornography, that probably took a boatload of willpower. Probably took more willpower than most of us have. So it's a great time to be alive. There's a lot of good tech, but it's also never been easier to do the wrong thing. Never been easy to sin. And I think that's something we need to keep in mind with our young people. We can often get down on them saying, why are you doing this? What a stupid move. Really sad that you chose that path. Actually, we may not have chosen that path. It wasn't even a path that was available to us back in the day. So we need to understand that these guys are living in a pretty tricky time. There are some good options, but it's also never been easier to go off the rails.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I mean, we're talking about we need to educate our young people. Do we need to make sure that we're educating their parents or their caregivers as well? Because so much of the onus, unfortunately, because parents are so busy, because parents are working hard to to look after, to keep, sometimes get food on the table. Others, unfortunately, don't have that caregiver to look after them. But is it do we need to make sure that we're educating parents and caregivers about AI as well?
I think we do. I think we really do. In fact, it depends on your philosophy of education. Mine personally says that education is a partnership between a parent and a school community. And actually, the responsibility lies with the parents. Now, the parents can partner with a school. In fact, the philosophy of the schools that I have worked at and that my grandparents founded, they're called parent partnership schools for that reason. It's the understanding that it's the parent's responsibility to educate a child and to bring them up and to nurture them and grow them, and they can partner with a school if they desire. They can share the responsibility, they can never abdicate the responsibility. And we see when parents abdicate the responsibility of educating, it doesn't go well. It doesn't go well. Even if a student's going to school, and of course, I'm a school teacher. I love it when people come to school. Still, we see when the parents are switched on, when the parents are invested, oh boy, does it make your life easier as a teacher. That student comes into the class with a natural momentum. They have a love for learning that we might not see elsewhere. So we really do need the parents to be switched on. And when it comes to seismic changes in the society, like we're seeing with AI, I think schools need to be on the front foot. Some of the best schools that I've worked with over the last 12 months have been running parent information sessions. They've been making resources available to parents. They've been having sort of ask me anything sessions, maybe with the ICT coordinator and the principal or a head of teaching and learning. I think often parents are going to get information from somewhere. Why wouldn't it be us? We're the ones partnering with them in the education of their child. Why wouldn't we want to be on the front foot? I often feel when it comes to schools, there's a supply and demand issue with information. And often schools are supplying the sort of information that there's not a whole lot of demand for, but the information that there is a demand for, well, there's not a whole heck of a lot of supply when it comes to sort of relating to parents and dealing with parents. So look, I would say if you're a school and if you're a school leader, it is well worth thinking, how can we not only make sure that the students are learning and understanding best practice around artificial intelligence, but how can we bring the parents in on this as well? After all, the child doesn't belong to the school. The child belongs to the parents. So how can we actually partner well with that parent in making sure the student's making wise AI choices, not just at school, but at home as well? After all, that's where they're going to be spending a whole chunk of time.
So we've noticed, we're talking about educating students and parents and certain things, but I'm sure you've noticed as well, some parents tend to abdicate certain responsibilities of parenting and try and put it onto the teacher. And when it doesn't work, it's like it's the teacher's fault. So have you found that it's probably in the more recent, probably the last 5 to 7 years, have you found that coming out more and more?
Look, I think we've all seen it. I think every single teacher has seen it. And it's just a call for clear-headed communication with parents, isn't it? Because there needs to come a point where you say, look, I've actually done everything I can for this student. It depends on worldview, it depends on your philosophy, but we need to have a conception of students. And this is going to sound like I'm down on students. I'm not. I love students. I'm really dedicating my life to making their lives better. But we need to have a category for students who know what to do, who know the right action, and choose to do the opposite of that, choose not to do the right thing. Because it's all very well to say, oh, little Johnny didn't do his reading because it was pitched at the wrong level, or his instructions weren't chunked clearly enough, or he doesn't understand how to read rubrics. And you go, okay, well, that might very well be the case, and you make your adjustments. But there might actually, in the grand scheme of things, be some things that student can also do to help themselves. They might actually be making some bad decisions in some areas, and they might need to make some good decisions in those same areas. So I'm all for working with students. I'm all for providing differentiated support, but it's not as if me as a teacher, it's not as if I have every dial and every switch and every lever that I can pull, that if I do my part perfectly, they'll get it right. Actually, the onus is on them. Let's treat them like human beings who have responsibility, right? We're trying to build them into adults, and adults are people who take responsibility for their actions. So that needs to start in school. And actually, we need to understand, yes, as a teacher, I have got some big levers that I can pull to make it as easy as possible for them to engage well in my class. But I tell you what, they've got a few dials that they can twiddle as well. And if they're not doing any work on their side, well, we're actually not going to get any synergy in the classroom. So, yeah, I've had those conversations with parents, and that's the angle I try and take. I try and say, I love your son or daughter. I'm actually, not only am I committed in the future to working well with them, I'm already trying to do my best now. And actually, if we're really serious about working together, I'd love to hear your thoughts about what I can do. I might have an idea or two about what your son or daughter can do to help me be the best teacher of them I can be. Does that, I mean, I'm sure you've been in the same situation. How would you play that sort of scenario?
Yeah, it's all about collaboration and trying to take away. It's not about me. It's not about you. It's about the student. It's about your child. It's about the person under your care and under my care. We want the best for them. We want the what success is for them, and whatever that may be. And success could be going to university. Success could be and which I'll push every day of the week is go get a trade. Um, I've got a trade, I've got university degrees, but I think for some and for like school isn't for everyone. And I if someone has that natural inclination to go, yeah, well, look, I just want to build stuff, or I just want to do stuff. I love cars, or I love this, or I want to do that. It's like I will, my disclaimer is, hey, yeah, go for it, go, fill out the paperwork, talk to your parents, talk to your
Mm.
parents first. But if that's what you want to do, it's a conversation that you've got to have. So yeah, it's finding that collaborative approach for the success of the child.
I've got a follow-up question for you, Phil, if you'll permit me.
Absolutely.
Well, look, one of the things I've observed as you look at education, it almost always works in pendulum swings. And so for a while, it was only a few students that would sort of go through to grades 11 and 12. Maybe people are even dropping out of school in grades 7 and 8. I went off and I actually worked in this factory for a while, or I worked as a typist over here. I left in grade 9 and I joined my dad on the job site. And then you've got certain talking heads, people with certain ideologies saying, no, 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 we actually need people to continue to grade 10. And then, no, 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 you've got to go up until the end of grade 12, unless there are some very special circumstances, then perhaps you can leave earlier. And it's almost championed as a win, keeping people in. Yes, look at how many percentage of people graduated out of year 12 this year. Actually, as I look around the classroom, sometimes I say, well, look, there's a cohort of people here who are actually just pretty sick of putting their hand up and asking to go to the toilet. And they'd be looking to get a job at a mechanics workshop, on the job site, as a hairdresser. Is it a big win for education when we say, no, 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 stay in your lane, you have to graduate year 12? Do you see that as a net gain for education and for students?
If you're holding them for the sake of getting them to graduate so that your league table looks better, it's a loss. It's a loss because you're taking the student out of focus. You're taking the success of the individual away at the gain of the system, and I think that's that can only have detrimental effects. Now, look, maybe some students need to stay back. I mean, I know I wanted to leave in year 10, but I was a rat bag, and back in those days, you would apply for a job and you would have to send your school reports in, and every report said, yeah, doesn't listen, causes trouble. So I didn't get a job. My parents said, well, you're not sitting on the couch, you're going to go to school. So they were willing to make that sacrifice, but they said, if you can get a job whilst at school, hey, by all means, you can leave. But yeah, so I think if they hold them back, it's a loss for both the school and the student, because it creates that negativity in the environment, and emotions are contagious, and schools are communities, and they we know cold and flu season, it spreads through that community like wildfire. But it's also the same with negative emotion. It can spread and can really cause some damage. So
it's a good point.
Yeah, so that's my view. That's my view on it. And I'll always push. But again, it's one of those things. Whereas if a kid wants to be an engineer, but they love doing stuff, like we have that many pathways that are available to our students. Go do a trade for 4 years. Whilst you're doing your trade, do your grad certificate at night. you finish at the same time, and then you've got a tremendous amount of practical experience. You've got the theoretical experience, and you go in and you bring value to your next position. So I'm all for hard work as well. So
yeah, nice. I like it.
yeah, so it's that's my view. Now we talk about that. We're talking about skills. We're talking about hard work. You are proving that that you're not afraid of hard work by all the stuff that you're doing, and we know 100% that teachers work hard. Probably some of the hardest working or definitely longest hours that a lot of professions have. So teachers are working harder than ever, and generative AI is around. And there's some people are saying it's the savior of education. I personally don't believe it's the savior of education. I think it's going to help. But do you think generative AI has the ability to help teachers get back to teaching?
Look, I think AI is going to be a huge benefit to education. And there's a couple of ways that could work. So it could be in terms of raw time saving. There's a lot of teachers out there, they're working their evenings, they're working their holidays. They're actually not their best selves when they're constantly under this burden of work that they can't seem to find their way out of. I really do think simple things with artificial intelligence, we might use text differentiation. We might use it for lesson planning. We might use it for creating exit tickets for our class or learning intentions, success criteria. There are going to be simple moves with AI that we can do to fast track some of that administrative work. And that might actually then, our calendar might look a little freer as a result. And for some teachers, that might make all the difference, right? That's going to stop the burnout. That's going to keep them in the profession. However, I often think about it like this. If you had two buttons in front of an educator, and this one, if you hit it, it'd mean that they didn't have to spend any extra time working. In fact, they could reduce their time spent working. But if they hit this one, they'd be able to have a bigger impact on every student in their class. I think all the teachers are hitting this button. Because I really think what's so frustrating about the long hours is not that they're long hours. I know plenty of people who can work really hard. It's actually because you're doing all those hours, but you don't feel like you're making a dent. That's the really frustrating thing. And so if actually AI is able to help us put students in a more tailored, personalized, feedback-rich environment than ever before possible, well, I think that's a real benefit for us. And that's going to be, for a teacher, one of the most supremely satisfying feelings you can have is saying, no, yeah, I'm doing all this work, but I'm making a difference for my learners. There's a big difference in being tired of your work. Oh, I've had a gut full of teaching, and being tired in your work, saying, yeah, I'm tired, but it's a good tired. My head hits the pillow. I fall asleep in 30 seconds, but you know what? I'm really, really happy with the way I'm spending my energy. And I think that space of creating a more tailored, personalized environment for your students, AI is fantastic at that. I mean, we talked about differentiating texts. I used to spend half an hour changing the level of complexity and the length on a 10-minute reading in class. Now, that's a low value proposition for me, but you've got to do it because you've got students in the class who won't be able to read otherwise. I can do the same work. I can do it in 14 seconds now with AI. What does that mean? Well, yeah, I'm saving some time, but more importantly, Phil, I'm having a much bigger impact. And so that's one of the big opportunities when it comes to AI in education, I think. There are benefits for teachers, but I think the really powerful benefits that will reverberate through the whole learning community come when we're able to put our students in that tailored, personalised, feedback-rich environment.
Yeah, that's what I've found. Now, look, I've been playing with it for since it's sort of popped up on the radar in 2022, the end of November, and I've just found that it's given me, I could get this extra time back, put my feet on the couch, but what it's done is given me time so I can invest back into my classroom, and that's where I see the benefit.
Yeah, well, that's right. And sorry, you go.
I was going to say it's reducing. It's important work, but it's mundane and it's a burden. But we've got to do it. But by using some of the tools that are now being made available, it's it's allowed me to go, okay, well, what now? Instead, like you said, what used to take you half an hour takes you, less than a minute. Same for me. It's like, okay, I've got this time. Okay, how can I make my classroom more engaging? Or how can I reach that student how do I invest in them so that they can get the best experience?
Exactly. It's a clear value add, I think. And as teachers, we know we've got a list of things as long as our arm that we'd like to do in our classrooms, but just haven't had the time or the opportunity or the energy to do. So AI, I think, fast tracking some of those administrative duties. And look, I don't want to give admin a bad name. It can so easily come out the side of our mouths like we don't like the red tape, we don't like the bureaucracy. A lot of people are probably a lot more safe in our schools because of the red tape, because of the bureaucracy. Some of the things that you see on the news every so often that happened decades ago, students were more vulnerable. There was less daylight shining in on the whole system, and stuff happened in the dark that really shouldn't have happened. So bureaucracy is a natural result of trying to make sure that the systems we have are keeping as many people safe as possible. So I don't reproach that. I actually share that goal myself. But what does it mean? It just means like 600 extra things you have to do every week as a teacher. You've got this form to fill out, and you got this thing you need to record, and you got these sort of NCCD requirements you have to enter into your system, and all these sorts of things. Again, well-intentioned, probably a net good, but boy, it takes some time. So that's where I see AI actually helping us. And then you're right. If you're not spending the whole time doing this low-level admin stuff, you go, well, how can I make my classroom a more exciting physical space to be in? Or how about I breathe some new life into this same unit that I've been teaching for 3 years and it just hasn't really been landing any of those times? That sort of stuff. So it's actually, I think, a bit of time and a bit of space will be able to level up our teaching. And that's where the cynical school leaders are just getting it wrong between you and I. They think that teachers want to use AI so they can go and play more golf or drink more umbrella drinks on the beach or just take it easy. I really don't think that's the case. All the teachers that I know, they're not self-centered, they're actually student-centered. And I think if we give teachers a bit more time, a bit more space for creativity, we will certainly see that benefit accrue to our students.
Yeah, most definitely. And I think it's that, teachers don't want to, they want to do the best, and they want to make sure their students are doing the best that they possibly can. And they want to go on, we work hard as we should, but they want to be able to go and have that game of golf or have that drink on the beach without feeling guilty. And so many of them do, because they're going, am I allowed to look after myself? Am I allowed? Oh, but hold on, I've got a pile of marking I've got to do. So I think this new ability to fast track this important but mundane or tiresome work is going to give that freedom to go, oh, actually, I can go and have a good round. I'm not a golfer. I'm more of a hack, but we've got to get out there and we've got to recharge. So,
well, that's true. And one of the exciting things about AI is, for a long time, there's been a seesaw, right? And no one can balance it. You're either having to focus on student care or you focus on self-care. And if you're focusing on your self-care, you feel guilty because you know that you're not doing all you could for your students. Actually, with AI, now we can focus on student care without sacrificing our self-care. And that's fantastic, because it actually means the person that we are being in the classroom is the best quality person that we can be, but we're also providing the best quality resources and materials and learning for our students. And you're right. Look, I'm not a great golfer either, but I do like having the time to find a round. It's good for the soul. It's a nice walk. And it means that when I get in the classroom, I'm actually feeling refreshed, because I'm not my best self if I've been marking till 11 p.m. And so what does that mean? It means I'm probably going to miss a couple of good opportunities in class to talk deeply with students. I'm probably not going to be doing that quality differentiated teaching in the classroom on the fly that I would do if I was feeling fresh. So now that we have AI, we can really focus in on self-care without sacrificing our student care. Everyone wins. We'll be more well-rested and we'll actually be more attentive in the classroom. It's a net gain for ourselves and our students. It's a good time to be a teacher, Phil.
absolutely. And let's hope that we can, by using this, by implementing this, we can keep some of these younger teachers who are being bashed up by the system. Let's try and help them stay, because they love to teach, but I've been around for a while now, so I've learnt the skills, and I've implemented strategies. And look, I've had two major burnouts in my career.
Mm.
So, and being the typical Aussie bloke, was the cause of most of it. Was like, yep, she'll be right, she'll be right, she'll be right, until it's not.
Mm.
Self care is super important, and getting help when you're struggling is super important. And I think especially as men, we find it very hard to put our hand up and say, oh, geez, I'm struggling a bit. But as teachers, we even more so, because, like you said, we're student focused. We are probably the most, with the exception of probably nursing as well, some of the most selfless people in society, because we're putting others well ahead of our needs. So hopefully things, with AI, and I'm assuming that's what my teacher aid is all about, is there to help teachers.
Well, that's right. That's right. It's there to be your aid. Controversially, perhaps, it's not there to be a co-pilot. It's not in the driver's seat with you. It's actually your aid. You're in control. And the thing about it is, at the start of this year, I emailed every state and territory education minister. And I said, I want to do a pilot. I want to do a pilot with people in your most disadvantaged schools. I want to work with you to make sure that those teachers are as well supported as they possibly could be when it comes to the resources they're able to generate for themselves and for their students. And I tell you what, I didn't get a great response back. What are governments and institutions doing instead? They're saying, okay, let's wipe HECS fees for people who are going into education. Let's have free degrees for people who are moving into. And to me, that just absolutely bakes my noodle. I cannot wrap my head around that. You've got a system that is churning through educators at a rate of knots, and the solution is just trying to turn the tap on a little faster so we can get more people into the very same system that's cooking the goose of everyone in there at the moment. And I just go, look, I actually don't think that's the way. I don't think that's the smart play. Now, I actually have had some good conversations recently with some state and territory education ministers saying, look, AI is not going anywhere, but you know what? Your teachers are. They're leaving. So how about we try and take this technology and we try and use it to help your teachers in your most vulnerable schools, and that's going to also help your students in those same vulnerable schools. So yeah, look, I think everyone knows that teaching is tough. Everyone knows the burnout statistics are eye-watering in education. But what are we going to do about it? Are we just going to try and force more people into the same system? I don't know, man. It doesn't sound like it's going to work to me. So it's one of those things. I think once you see the solution, once you've used the tools yourself, once you've seen the difference it can make to you, you're thinking, how is everyone not seeing this? But it's a slow conversation, and I guess it's one we'll be having over the coming decades,
Yeah, and hopefully we can make those incremental changes for the good, that the powers that be actually start to listen to the feet that are walking out the door.
Yeah, amen.
Absolutely, mate. Paul, so far this has been an amazing conversation. I appreciate your time. I love your passion. It is getting pretty late, and I value your time. And with three little people, trust me, my three little people are now 28, 26, and 24. So I know little people don't care what time you go to bed. They still wake up at the same time.
That's true. That's absolutely true. Yep. And they've woken up at the same time. We've got quite the system going here at the Matthews household. So every day wake up is exactly the same time. I tell you what, mate, she's early. So yeah, I appreciate your generosity in understanding what we're going through over here in terms of sort of the bedtime and sleeping routines of the young ones.
Absolutely. So we're just going to finish off with a couple of quick questions, and then we'll wrap it up for the evening. So, first question: favorite drink?
Coke, no sugar, no caffeine. What's left after you take away the sugar and caffeine? I don't know. I call it dark water, but it's pretty yummy, and I get around it.
Hey, as long as you enjoy it. Now, do you have, like, you're in AI?
Yep.
You're building an AI platform, or you've built an AI platform.
Yep.
What's leading up to that? What's your favorite large language model? What was your go-to before My Teacher Aid?
I'm always a chat GPT guy. I know that people have gone further afield than that, but it's always got me where I need to go. And I mean, depending on how technical your listeners are, that's what's under the hood of my teacher aid. Obviously, we've done a lot of work in making sure it's trained and specific and able to get high quality results with simple input and the click of a button. But that's what's under the hood. I rate it. I think it's great.
Excellent. Now, I don't know how much traveling you've done over your years, but is there a country that you've been to that's really challenged you?
I've done far less than I want to. AI actually might change that. I'm heading off to North Carolina in August to do some consulting with a Christian school over there, going all around Australia this year, and I'll be heading over to Dubai and Indonesia at the end of the year. So look, let's have a chat 1 year from now and I'll be able to answer the question well.
Absolutely. Well, hey, coming from, well, you're a Tasmanian, so you've always got to travel. You're the smallest part of Australia.
It's true.
Are there
true.
any parts of Australia that have been more challenging than others?
Any parts of Australia that have been more challenging?
Yeah.
Yeah, look, I think it's always a bit of a muck around when we go to Melbourne or Sydney. I've been at Melbourne a lot recently working with some schools over there, and they're just budgeting 45 minutes to get anywhere. And that cooks my goose, man. Like 45 minutes in Tasmania, that's a long trip. You're probably packing a lunch for 45 minutes, right? You're probably having a nap on the side of the road somewhere. So I just don't love spending that much time in cars. And I'm really blessed to be living. I mean, we have our school, we have our church, we have our friends, and it's all within a 10-minute radius. So that's one thing that I find a little bit more frustrating about other parts of the world is you're just budgeting a lot more time to get anywhere.
Yeah. Yeah, budgeting time is a big thing. I remember, back in Sydney, I lived there for the last 40. I've only been on the Gold Coast for about 6 or 7 years now. But yep, I used to have to factor in if I wanted to go anywhere, I would put it in. I'd look at it and go, "Yep, I'm going to add half an hour to that one." I remember one afternoon, it was frustrating. It was a hot Friday afternoon. I just wanted to get home from school. I'm in a car with no air conditioning, with a heavy clutch. And it took me, look, it was a cool looking car, don't get me wrong. But it took me half an hour to go 500 meters. So,
that's rough, man. That's rough.
So that was a tough one. Now, it wouldn't be the Tattoo Teacher podcast if I didn't ask you, do you have any tattoos?
I do. I've got my family crest. I say it's my family crest. I made it up. So hopefully it will be a family crest from here on in. On my chest, it says work hard, love God. And then it's got a spade and a pick. And it's the fact that we're builders as the Matthews family. Not builders actually, but what do we build? We build churches, we build schools, we build tech platforms, we build businesses, these sorts of things. That's our calling in the world, to go and build. And that's one. I've got a bunch of other stuff. I've got a Tasmania up on my shoulder here. I've got a bit of script on my neck here that says just passing through, just below the shirt collar line. I've got a bunch, man. Look,
Nice.
I probably won't be getting any more, but there was certainly a season of my life where I got a whole bunch. And I will say what I did was I said, because I've got a very addictive personality, maybe like you. But what I said is I'm taking like sort of this pec and down to the elbow on my left arm, and I can do whatever I want in that space, but I'm not going to go further afield than that for 5 years. And so that sort of kept me in pretty good stead.
Fair enough. And now with young people, they'd be, they take up all your time and you can't be sitting in a tattoo parlor for hours on end.
Yeah, you're exactly right. Yeah.
Now, last question, but certainly not least. If people want to find out more about you and more about my teacher aid, where can they actually go to?
Sorry, I just missed that one, Phil.
No, that's okay. If people want to find out more about you and more about your platform, My Teacher Aid, where can they go?
Well, look, I got to tell you, I'll slip you the $5 note afterwards. I appreciate you lobbing me that softball. Look, the same place that you and I connected, Phil. So I post on LinkedIn quite a bit. I find that a really great place actually to share ideas, to receive ideas, to communicate with other like-minded professionals. I used to be on Twitter a fair bit. That became a bit of a toilet. I'm now mostly on LinkedIn and I'm really enjoying that space. So connect with me on LinkedIn. It's just Paul Matthews AI. And you can go to myteacheraid.com. That's myteacheraide.com. At the moment, we've got a 7-day free trial running. We've got a bunch of great AI tools. We've got the curriculum, the Australian curriculum version 9 integrated in there. So all your resources are curriculum compliant. And ultimately, I believe from the bottom of my heart that it's actually going to help you save time, be more creative, and have a bigger impact in the classroom. So yeah, have a red hot crack at that. It's myteacheraid.com. And either way, whether you connect on the tech platform or via LinkedIn, yeah, really, really happy to have a chat about AI and education and ethics and worldview and tech and any of these sorts of things.
Mate, well, that is fantastic. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for your passion. Thank you for what you're doing for education. And I'm sure there's already teachers out there who are thanking you for it. And if they haven't, thank you. I'll pass on my thanks for them to you.
Thank you.
All right, well, you have a good evening. Go and enjoy the last little bit of the night, and yeah, keep kicking on.
Thank you, Phil. It's been a treat. Happy teaching.
Cheers. Thank you for listening to the Tattooed Teacher podcast. I hope you enjoyed the conversation and found it insightful. If you like what you heard, please subscribe, leave a review, and share with your network. Special thanks to DJ Fruit Salad for the music. You can find more of his work on Instagram at DJ Fruit Salad Official. Thanks again for listening, and I hope to see you in the next episode. Stay cool, be blessed.